Welcome to episode number 16 of the Kevin Rooke Show. Today's guest is Jack Everitt, the founder of THNDR Games. Now, a little backstory. I think it was back in May 2021. I was starting to think about a lightning podcast, and I was trying to build one. And I reached out to Jack and asked if he would be interested in doing an interview. He said yes. We did it. We filmed it. I wasn't quite ready to publish it and to go for it. So the episode never went to air. But at the end of our conversation, Jack said, hey, there's this cool lightning podcasting company starting up in the UK. They're called Fountain. You should reach out. And so eventually I got connected with Fountain. I invested in Fountain. A few months later started this podcast as a lightning podcast on Fountain. And so all of this kind of started with that initial conversation I had with Jack. So it's nice to be able to kind of come full circle here and get this conversation out for you guys to listen to. THNDR Games is an incredible business. They have 50,000 plus monthly active users. We talked all about the growth they've experienced so far. We talked about earning money for playing games, the importance of building on Lightning, how THNDR Games thinks about designing games and making sure they're still fun, even when there's an element of earning and an element of money involved. And we talked about all sorts of Lightning-related topics. Just a quick shout out before we get into the episode. This episode is sponsored by Voltage. Voltage is the premier provider of Bitcoin and Lightning node infrastructure. We'll talk more about them later in the episode in the Lightning round, when I will also be giving away 1,600 sats to a commenter. Someone who sends in a comment over the Lightning Network will be eligible for 1,600 sats this episode because it's episode number 16. But we'll get into that at the end of the show. Hope you enjoy the episode. Jack, thanks for coming on the show today. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. Well, thanks for having me back.
Yeah. This is a long overdue second try at this podcast. Let's start, for those who aren't familiar with you, about your background in both gaming and in Bitcoin, and how those two worlds collided for you.
Yeah, so I used to be a special effects software developer for films. So I was making, my first ever product I built was actually lightning special effects. So you used to add lightning bolts to your films. And then the App Store came out and I thought, I'll make a lightning bolt app on the App Store. And just like, I was one of those guys when it first came out in 2009, and I just made an app and I made enough money from that one app to like quit my job for the year. So I was like, I'm just going to try and do this app thing. And it just went from there, kind of snowballed. So I did my lightning bolt app, and then I did some games on the App Store. And I had another hit that went to number one in the chart, was this like kind of casual idle game. So I had this like indie game studio that I thought I was my primary work and my primary way of earning a living. And I was always interested in Bitcoin as well. So I've been following Bitcoin since 2013, just as a hobby. Did some mining, did some trading, followed the same path as everyone else, where you like get interested in shitcoins and then you go away from them because you realize they'll just go to zero. So I've been through the whole journey. And then I kept following Bitcoin. I was just always interested in it. But it wasn't until I experimented with the Lightning Network where I kind of realized, this could actually work quite well in games now, because you can send it with like an instant settlement and like nearly zero in fees. And it's like basically super divisible. So it had better applications in games than just using the on-chain Bitcoin, which had the problems of fees and having to wait 10 minutes for it to confirm. All those problems existed. So I did an experiment with the first game, which was Bitcoin Bounce, that I just produced in a couple of weeks to take to the Lightning Conference as a kind of icebreaker to meet some other Bitcoiners, because the Lightning Conference in Berlin in 2019 was my very first Bitcoin conference. So I wanted to have something to show. So yeah, I took it there, and there was some Bitcoin in the game, and you bounced along the blockchain in this little platformer game and collected the Bitcoin, and it got really good reception. So I just thought, do you know what? I love Bitcoin, I love games. I'm just going to pivot basically my company and be to a Bitcoin gaming company. But my old games I left with the old company because they were for a younger audience. So because I felt like Bitcoin slightly, I didn't feel comfortable like pushing it onto like really young people at that stage. So I started a brand new company and I just thought I'll make games specifically for this genre of gaming that will work with it, rather than trying to shoehorn it into my old games. So that's basically where I've got to today. Thunder Games has now got 3 games, and we've got a team of about 10 people now, and we're just going to build some more cool games and hopefully stuff that the Bitcoin community will love.
Yeah. So for listeners who aren't familiar, the 3 games right now, Bitcoin Bounce, Turbo 84, and most recently Thunder Bay. Can you talk to me about the progression and the iterations you went through in those first 3? Like, what were some of the lessons that you took away from Bitcoin Bounce, Turbo 84, that you've then applied to Thunder Bay, and possibly into future games?
So Bitcoin Bounce first started off having just like Bitcoin in the game, but I quite like before I released it, I realized that there's probably going to get like lots of people trying to hack it. Also, like bots will just try and farm the Bitcoin out of it because it would just be easily reproducible, and you could just spin up loads of machines, then bots to just basically farm the Bitcoin out of it. So I pivoted it to, so that was my first kind of learning, is like that it was probably not super scalable in that way. So I changed it up so that Bitcoin Bounce had a prize draw, so that people basically in the prize draw collect tickets instead of Bitcoin, and it gives you a chance to win some Bitcoin. I've set it so that everyone does win at least like 1 Satoshi, so it's still a bit fun. And then it turns it a bit more in, like the collecting of the items, into a bit of a game. There's a leaderboard, so it's a bit more interesting, and also it alleviates some of the problems that are associated with just like putting money in the game for people to just collect, because like they'll just steal it or work out how to game it. And that was quite successful. So I was nervous a bit when I released that game without Bitcoin directly in it, and it had this like prize draw, because I was wondering what the reception would be, but everyone loved it. They found it fun. So I proceeded with that concept and built the second game, which was Turbo 84, which was a bit more of a similar style of game, a hyper casual game again, but it had like better in-app purchases. It monetizes better. It had some different strategies to monetize users, with different ads and different types of products people could buy. So it was like slightly, so I kind of improved on my kind of original prototype game, which was Bitcoin Bounce. And then with Thunder Bay, which is a bubble shooter, we basically decided to try a completely different genre to compare how those types of users for that genre of game are different and how they react to Bitcoin differently. Because the first 2 were hyper casuals, and the Thunder Bay is this bubble shooter, which is a casual game, and it's the type of game that women prefer. So women have different tendencies in games, like compared to men, if you just generalize. So they kind of prefer to play a more relaxing game, as men tend to be more competitive. So we're just comparing. One of our we really want to try and get women into Bitcoin and gaming as well. So we're trying to make a portfolio of games that will appeal to everyone, because Bitcoin is for everyone, not just like men, not just millennial men. So yeah, that's basically where we've got to today on the games, and we're planning in the future to try lots of different genres and hopefully come up with some winning formula that is going to put my company on the map.
And are all 3 games right now offering the same kind of prize structure? You talked about that draw where you get tickets and then you get kind of entered into a draw to win Bitcoin. Are all 3 using the same mechanic, or are you experimenting in different ways with different games?
Yeah, so they all use the first 2, the hyper casual, Bitcoin Bounce and Turbo 84. You have the prize draw and you collect tickets as you play, so it's kind of skill based. Whereas Thunder Bay, you collect tickets for completing levels, so it's slightly different because it's not infinite. There's only a certain number of levels in the game, so it kind of has this different element that the game is completable. So you can only win a certain number of prizes. Whereas Turbo 84 and Bitcoin Bounce, like you could just theoretically keep playing forever and win prizes every day. So there's a finality to the level-based game, which is different, but they all have the same basic prize amounts in the games. Turbo 84 and Bitcoin Bounce, we also have like hyper casual esports tournaments where at the weekend I'll compete against all the players, or we'll have a special guest or someone else from the THNDR Games team will compete. And you basically have to beat us at our own game. And if you beat us, you get a chance to win bigger prizes than if you lose to us. And there's like a leaderboard where if you come first, you win the top prize and that kind of thing. So we do have some competitive gaming as well as the prize draw type tournaments.
When you're thinking about pitching these games to new users and to like grow the addressable audience, how do you think about the pitch? Are you focusing on Bitcoin? Is that a key part of how you explain these games and how you try and share these games, or are you focused more on, do you just talk about the game? Is it the game that's the draw for new users, or the fact that they can earn money?
I think so right now it's definitely the fact that they can earn money. This genre of type of game already existed before. It's not like a new thing. There's like plenty of companies that offer ways for people to play games and win money or prizes. It's like it's been around as long as the App Store's been around. The only difference with Bitcoin is it just offers a different way for people to win prizes. They can win them quicker. They can win more prizes because they can be smaller. So it's just a different user experience. So we're kind of targeting people who just want to win money because that's the easiest like organic audience for us to get. But we're obviously analysing the data to see who our actual audience are. We're picking up from these organic channels, and we're going to target those people in the mainstream and try and educate them about Bitcoin. And our whole product is about onboarding people to Bitcoin. So it's our job to find them, tell them, show them, hey, don't be scared of Bitcoin. Here's a game, you can win some Bitcoin. It's this easy, and here's your wallet. That's what we're trying to do. So we're trying to find people who are interested in Bitcoin, interested in earning money in a game, and they're curious. But we are trying to make the games the most important thing. So we don't compete on the level of how much Bitcoin we give away. I think probably out of all the Bitcoin companies, we give the least amount of money away. And it's kind of a sanity check to make sure that it's not just a race to the bottom. We don't want to compete on the who can give away the most money gets the most users, because those users won't be very valuable anyway. So there's not much, it's kind of a fool's errand doing that, I think. You need to compete on giving away some Bitcoin, and people just find it an extra bit of enjoyment in the game, but the game's already really good, really cool and fun.
Right. That makes sense. And I mean, so far it seems to be working. I saw a recent CoinDesk article that mentioned that you guys had 50,000 monthly active players across your games. Can you speak to the kind of growth you've seen in the last year or so, and any of the inflection points along the way?
Yeah, so the growth has been pretty steady, and it's basically gone up with the interest in Bitcoin and the Bitcoin price, obviously. As more people learn about these types of products that exist, and they learn how to use the technology, and also I think as the younger people who are more willing to learn are getting older and they're using these games. But yeah, so it's basically growing at a quite I wouldn't say we're at the hockey stick turning moment yet, because there's a lot of people are actually very interested in these blockchain games. That has a bit more of an appeal. The play to earn games has a lot more. That buzzword is very hot right now, and people searching for those type of games. Whereas our product is not play to earn; it's actually technically free to win, because you're not guaranteed to earn anything. It's like a prize for competing against me in a tournament or trying to win a prize draw. So it's not like we're paying people to play. So our product is slightly different. So we do have probably have a different growth curve to a play to earn model game. But we are seeing month on month it is growing. Since that CoinDesk article, we're up 10 or 20%, which was only recently. Which is down to we released a new game and there's Christmas, but it's going in the right direction, so it's going up.
Yeah. And so you think that mostly that tends to track the price of Bitcoin, or is there also a relationship? Obviously you mentioned you did release a new game that must have had some kind of boost. But do you get the sense that it's also tied to Lightning adoption at all, or how do you pick apart the kind of reasons why this growth is accelerating now?
I don't really think it's to do with Lightning adoption, because there are loads of games that were doing Bitcoin gaming for Lightning. Like they would use Coinbase as their like cashing out system. So you just put your Coinbase address in. So I don't think it's particular. I think it's just organic growth of people like learning about the new technology and like just general interest. I don't think there's any particular turning point yet. I mean, I'm so close to the ground on this. Like I can't see the big picture of the growth. But I imagine if you zoom out, maybe there was some kind of turning point. There's definitely going to be now. Cash App support Lightning to some level. I'm not sure if they support. I think maybe they only do paying out. I don't know if they do accepting payments in or anything yet. But that's a big turning point, I think, for Lightning, because we have a lot of people with Cash App. So we had a big problem recently where Cash App is now supporting Lightning, and on iOS, when a game or app tries to access open a Bitcoin wallet, you can't actually decide help the user pick which Bitcoin wallet to open. The operating system picks one at random. It seems like it might be the last one installed. So now Cash App has activated that they support Lightning. Our games are now like opening up Cash App. So and we've noticed where we had a bug with Cash App, we can't actually cash out to Cash App yet. We noticed how many people are really interested in cashing out to Cash App is a lot. So I think once they enable a few extra features and they start, Cash App's a big brand. They start promoting some of the, like if they promoted us, for example, and said, look, you can just do THNDR Games. Here's a cool game. And here's an example of it working with Cash App. We would just get loads of users. So it's the big people coming into the space and activating it on their products, I think is the turning points. There's a lot of really cool wallets and projects now, but they're kind of growing organically. So it'd be interesting to see how the wallets compare with Cash App in America, because once Cash App activates like full Lightning features, like I don't know, like how a custodial wallet is going to compete in America versus Cash App, basically, because they're like on every like 1 in 2 phones or something.
Right. So now Cash App could definitely be an inflection point or like a catalyst for improving gaming experience. Do you think there are other second order effects of Cash App going onto Lightning? Like any other parts of the industry that are going to be changed, or do you have any predictions on how Cash App will affect other areas of Lightning Network? So
there's some interesting stuff happening on Lightning with LNURL, which I'm not sure like how much familiar you are or the audience are, but that's like a really cool way for services to connect with other services or with users of wallets to send payments without having to exchange a Lightning invoice. So it makes making payments really simple for the end user. And there's something called the Lightning address, which is a really cool way, which is gaining a bit of traction on Twitter. Zebedee have it, Coin Corner have it now, and I believe BottlePay are gonna. I think it's still on Twitter or in Telegram that they're adding it soon, and that's a way where users can do like an email address type address to say like you can send me Bitcoin here, and you can put that in any of your like Bitcoin services, and they can then send Bitcoin to that custodial system. So when Cash App, for example, come on, if they adopt that, it will be really big for that like open source protocol, because like then everyone will have the social, all the other companies have the social proof, like this is a really good protocol, this is how we're going to do these really good good UX experience for the users to do their payments. Or Cash App might do something different, and then because they're so big, everyone might have to like start supporting that, because the number of people using sort of Lightning wallets is probably only 100, 200,000 monthly users or something, I'd imagine. So, whereas Cash App's like, I don't know, 50 million monthly active users. So whatever system they pick is going to be probably significant. So that's how they could affect this. They could just, what technologies they use to solve some UX problems, that'll have big ripple effects.
Right. That makes sense. I have a question about how people use Thunder games versus how they use some of the mobile games that you've designed in the past. Do you notice that there's a difference at all in the like behaviors users take, or the patterns in how long they spend on a game when there's money involved, when there's funds
I think on a higher level they play for a lot longer, like significantly longer, to the point where when you show the results to other game developers or game industry people, they're like, whoa, that's quite crazy that they play for that much longer. Because like normally in a hyper casual game, people only play for like 7 days, but now they play for like months, But
that's the average user would churn after 7 days.
Yeah, on a hyper casual normally, because you need to do so many ads for it to be profitable, and they're so basic and simple that they just get boring. But adding Bitcoin obviously changes that. But I'm not 100% sure whether to say that it increases the amount of people that are playing it, or not increases the amount of people play it, or if the audience just changes to a different audience that is just more interested in earning money, so they naturally play longer. So it might actually reduce the, like, so if say you had a hyper casual game with the normal retention metrics, and that audience, if you add Bitcoin in and don't change the audience, it might actually make it worse, because they might not like Bitcoin, or they might think it's a scam, or they don't want to just earn money in a game, they just want to have fun. So, right. But then the audience could be just changing to one that does want Bitcoin, does want all those things, and that's why the numbers are higher. So it's probably a mixture of both. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned a little while ago that you guys aren't trying to compete on giving away the most money, that's kind of like your sanity check to make sure people are still enjoying the game. Do you think there's a sweet spot for the game rewards? Like, is there a right number for how much you should be giving away? Does that change over time?
It probably changes depending on the game. As there is definitely a sweet spot, because you don't want to give it away. Like, there's definitely like too much money to give away. You can't just, like, if you get the retention levels bigger because you've added Bitcoin in, that's only going to give you a certain amount of money extra per user, because they're playing for a bit longer. So you don't want to do more than that, because then what's the point of adding the Bitcoin in if you're giving away more than the benefit of adding this Bitcoin rewards to your game? So it's definitely like a ceiling that you can go to, where it's like, what's the point of adding it if you go past that ceiling? You might as well just leave the game as it is.
So the ceiling is based on the amount of Bitcoin given away versus the revenue that you could generate from that user.
Yeah, like if you had a baseline of revenue and then you add Bitcoin and it gives you more revenue, because people want the rewards and they stay for longer and they watch more ads and they buy more stuff, then like that difference, like you need to make sure like that's less than the Bitcoin you're giving away. Otherwise, it's kind of doesn't make
a cost.
Yeah, I mean, it might work in the short term because not many people do Bitcoin rewards in games. So it will give you more organic traffic just being one of the people that does it. So yeah, there's a lot of variables to it. I think there's definitely a sweet spot, and it depends on the game, and it depends how you want to set up a prize draw or a tournament. Some games might just do the occasional weekend tournament and they don't give away Bitcoin for the rest of the week, and everyone's just like practicing, that might be enough for some games for people to re-engage. It might not have to be paying them to play all week long, and just grinding, watching ads. I tend to think it's better to just have a light touch with it, and don't give too much away, don't do too many tournaments, and just have it a bit more casual than how much you can try and give away as much as you can. But the sweet spot is somewhere different on every game.
Yeah. Now, outside of gaming, does that same kind of ceiling apply, that like there's a limit on how much money you can give away if the application's different? Like, let's say, I know there's a bunch of shopping apps that let you earn Bitcoin cashback rewards. Is there a limit there? Do you think that in any of these apps there's going to be a limit on what is too much, or how much you could possibly earn before? Like, I imagine it also starts to turn into, you can easily see how it could slide into a job, right? And how it could stop becoming like, you stop using the app for what it's meant for, and you start doing it because it's giving you money at a certain point. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, well, there's different products out there that do these things. So there's Stackwork. I don't know if you're aware of Stackwork.
Yeah.
But they give away, they do tasks and they pay you. So that's just work. That is literally work. So that's like perfect, because you're literally doing work and earning sats doing these micro tasks. Then there's products. I built a website last year which was called Satsy, where you can earn money doing surveys. So you basically would answer questions about what you thought about new branding for a product, etc., and you would get paid for that. So that's okay, but that can be gamed, and people like do the surveys more than once if they find a higher paying one. It's just a bit of a nightmare. And then, so the ceiling there is like how much money the survey company gives you, how much profit you want to make on that. And then there's the cashback type apps that you spoke about, where they give you cashback. And traditionally, the cashback companies, those have existed since forever. And they all ended up as a race to the bottom, like who could give away the most, who could return the most rewards to their customers. And in the end, they just like had no margin on like the amount of cashback they gave away. They weren't like making money on that. They were having to make money in different ways, where they were offering like special like subscriptions to get special offers. Like you would pay £100 a year, and that's how they made their money, with these special things. It wasn't on the actual the cashback margin. So like, they do all race to the bottom, giving away, like in the end you just have to probably add cashback to your product, and as a feature for a user that you don't make any profit on. Right.
So how do you think about then building a moat? If there are other gaming companies that are going to come out with games, and they're also going to, you know, pay users Bitcoin or do something similar, if you're not going to compete on the amount you give away, how do you guys compete? Like, what is the kind of advantage that you try and like cultivate?
Well, the community is the biggest thing about Bitcoin. So we're trying to build a really strong community of like-minded people who are our fans, because we live in this content culture now, don't we, where everything is content creation. So we're really trying to lean on that side of things and be very visible to our users, and like I do customer support and I probably always will, and like talk in the Telegram groups, and visible on Twitter, and do podcasts like this one. So we're trying to be much more like a traditional games company wouldn't bother doing all those things. They would just make games and do customer support like the normal ways, but they wouldn't have the extra level of like characters and people that their players will recognize. And so when I do the tournament to the weekend, it's like versus me. So like everyone's playing the game creator. It's different to other games where they don't really do that or care about doing that. So there's loads of little tiny things we're trying to do. That's just one example where we could just like differentiate ourselves a little bit. We run our own node, which is probably the biggest thing. Most games companies won't do that. They'll use like a custodial thing, which already separates them from Bitcoin, and they can't connect with the actual like traction of like plebnet, that kind of thing. They've just completely separated from that. Whereas we all of our team like get a node as a gift when they started. So everyone on our team has a Umbrel node. So yeah, I don't know if other games companies will really put as much thought into it as that, and they won't have such a hardcore group of Bitcoin people. Like our community manager we just hired is like hardcore Bitcoiner. I'm hardcore. We've got Desiree Dickerson. She's like been in Bitcoin forever. So that we kind of differentiate ourselves on Bitcoin influence and Bitcoin the love of Bitcoin and like is genuine as well, and hopefully people see it.
Yeah. You mentioned Umbral, and I've noticed they've really amped up their app store, and they've got a lot of. They must have a few dozen apps now in there. Is there? Do you think that it would ever be right to put a Thunder Games game on the Umbral App Store? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that could be.
Work?
Yeah, it could be fun. I think the only problem is, like you want to have like we're specifically only on mobile because we want to make it as hard as possible for people to like reverse engineer our games and apps. And when you're on a hardware device, you get these certain privileges that you can check that the game is running on a real device, not like an emulator. So when you start like putting it on a web-based platform, like Umbral is like they're web-based apps, it's a lot easier to like view the source code. So that's just one concern. But there's definitely something I consider because I use Umbral and I'm always thinking of like, oh, how can we be on here? What can we do? Like, how can we do stuff? So hopefully, hopefully we'll come up with something clever.
Right. What are you most excited about for Thunder Games? Like looking forward to the next 6-12 months? Are there new games on the horizon? Any new features? Anything in particular?
Yeah, we've got like a stack of games like ready to come out, which are really cool because they're all quite different. So hopefully people will like find something they like, and when they can recommend. So we really want people to recommend our games to others to onboard them to Bitcoin. So we're excited to have like lots of different games that people can recommend for whoever they want, like their dad or their brother or their girlfriend or whatever. So we want people to be able to onboard people to Bitcoin. So yeah, we've got lots of cool games. We've just hired some new game developers, so we should be able to move quickly and release some cool stuff.
How fast is that cycle of creating new games? Like, I'm not super familiar with the traditional mobile gaming world or the Bitcoin mobile gaming world. How do you think about that cadence and like what's a good cadence at maturity?
Yeah, so it depends on the game. So we're actually doing an experiment with a game that we're planning, and it's going to take 2 weeks to create it and put Bitcoin rewards in it. And we've kind of got this one thread track of our business is like how quickly can we make a game and put Bitcoin rewards in? Because some games don't need to be crazy complicated. Some games can just be like a meme that's just fun. And we want to be able to react to that and do some fun stuff. Then we have some games that are taking like sort of 3 months timeline because they're more complicated and a bit more ambitious. So really just depends on the game. But it's just, well, my developers tell me 2 weeks on this a particular idea we've had. So I've put 4 weeks down in pencil, so we'll see what happens. But I'm confident they can do it. I'm excited to see.
Yeah. Is there ever a point where you'd think about acquiring other games and just like putting Bitcoin into them and taking them under the Thunder Games brand?
Yeah, no, that's definitely an option. Is to just do that. That's the quickest way to do it. So yeah, we do look at other games and see if there's anything. The hardest thing is like there's legal expenses along with that, and sometimes like some of the games that you would consider acquiring, the ones that are affordable to us, it's almost the same price to just build it ourselves. And it will be like, we'll know it'll be the right quality of code, etc. But there are games that we would consider acquiring, but they would cost like $100,000 or $200,000 or something, and we can't afford it. So, and not many companies want to put Bitcoin in because there's a big problems when you add Bitcoin to games with your banks won't like it. So if a games company's thinking, oh, I'm going to add Bitcoin to this game, all I would say is be careful, like with your bank, like make sure you don't get shut down.
Yeah. So I guess for people listening in and for Thunder Games users right now, how many games can they expect to have in this Thunder Games library as you reach maturity? Like, is this going to be like a Netflix style thing where you're always churning out new games and you've got dozens or maybe hundreds of games in the studio, or how big does that typically grow for a game studio?
I think, yeah, there's a couple of directions we could take. One is like loads of games and have like a big library of like classic games, simple games, like different themed games. Or we can try and find, like, normally with these sorts of games, there's only really like a few types of games that make like are very successful, just because the way the audience works, the type of audience that wants to win money, they like poker games and like those sorts of things. So I think what will end up happening is my prediction is either we're going to make loads of different games and just be like content creating loads of fun games for our audience and reacting to what they want, or we're going to find one particular game that we stumble across, and we've basically ordered our games in which we think's the most chance of having commercial success, and we might end up being like Angry Birds, where they basically just put all their eggs in one basket, pun intended, actually.
Interesting. So in a world where you do have a lot of different games, one thing that I keep thinking about, and I haven't seen anyone really implement yet in the Bitcoin gaming space, is like interoperability between games, where like if I have a certain upgrade, or if I've got a new skill, or if I've paid for some, or even just earned some status in a game, being able to then transfer that out to another game. I think would be really cool, and either like within the Thunder Games ecosystem, or more broadly, like within the entire Bitcoin gaming ecosystem, where I can say, oh, I've earned this new upgrade in Turbo 84 for the car, and I don't want to play this game anymore. I want to play this game, so I can then sell that upgrade for Bitcoin, and then buy another upgrade in this new game, and go on playing that with like the with what I've earned from the time that I spent with Turbo 84. Do you think that's like a realistic future for Bitcoin gaming?
Yeah, I do, but I think it would be encapsulated into, I don't think it would cross-pollinate with other game studios. So like Thunder Games, let's say we had 20 games. I could certainly see a way where we could let people sell the stuff between each other in our ecosystem, like our games, and that like the car in Turbo 84, if they could use it in a different one of our games, because we would be in control and be super easy for us to enable that thing, and we would enable it because that's what our community wants, and we would see the demand for it. Whereas trying to like expose it to let other game developers use like our car in their game or whatever is just like too much effort. It's not really worth it, and you can't tell. You don't want to give away for your users to basically churn into another product either. So there's lots of dynamics to consider. Yeah, we definitely would consider like basically your Thunder Games account would have products in it that you've bought, and they could be transferable between different games. And then in terms of the reputation, that could be different. That's something I know some other teams are working on in terms of like on the Liquid side chain with like some kind of tokens or NFTs where you basically, for example, would say, oh, I'm the first person who downloaded Turbo 84, so I get a special like NFT, and then you can use that as part of your reputation for other products. So people could recognize that you are an experienced Thunder Games person within the Thunder Games community. They could prove it by saying, I've got all of these different tokens and NFTs and elements, which is more transferable than in-game items, because it's more of an abstract concept like that. I am experienced, and these are the things that I've won or collected. So I know there's people talking about trying those kind of things, which could be quite fun. I think a lot of games would like that.
Yeah, but you don't think that there's going to be a marketplace, like an open marketplace for trading those, reputation NFTs, or like Thunder Games item where I'm trading that for Bitcoin rather than
I think it would be game? just be on the Thunder Games website or in the Thunder Games app. It wouldn't be like, if you wanted to like redeem your thing, and someone else in the Thunder Games ecosystem wanted to buy it, it would just be in the Thunder Games, on a Thunder Games dedicated website. I'd see it working more like that. There are actually, platforms like Satoshi's Games who have done this, and they've done a really good job actually. So if anyone wants to check that out, I think it's elixir.app is the website, and they're doing exactly what you said. So their items in their games are on this like open marketplace where people can buy and sell them, and that's using Liquid. So yeah, people are doing that. It could go that way, but there's a lot of like everything always goes into the custodial way because it's just so much easier. Like it's just natural. Like maybe there'll be that external marketplace, but it won't be the majority of people using that. It'll be like everyone goes to Thunder Games and they're buying and selling the stuff within the Thunder Games ecosystem because that's where you need it. Because it probably won't be interoperable with somewhere else because no one's going to really bother supporting it. So why would it need to leave that space?
Yeah, so you don't think there's much demand then for different game studios to interoperate with each other?
I think it's like the incentives don't align because so the problem is like, so in our games we have one of our main revenue streams is adverts, and normally that either it's like advertising an exchange for Bitcoin exchange, or it advertises other games. But those other games, and we block like Bitcoin related games. So if you want to make your game your product interoperable, like products in your game interoperable with another game, it's going to be a similar game to yours. Like if it's a car that's interoperable, it's going to be a car game. So I wouldn't want to let adverts in my game for other Bitcoin games. So I wouldn't want my car going into a competitor's car game. I just don't. It just doesn't feel like. I feel suspicious of it. Like I wouldn't want to work with a competitor so closely because they could do anything with your product, like your brand, your car. They could make it like a really slow crap car in their car game or something. Like who knows what they'll do with it. So yeah.
Okay.
I mean, let's see. I'm excited for what could happen. Probably it is happening. People are trying, so I'm happy to just follow it. It's exciting.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about building on Bitcoin specifically, because you've built traditional games, you've built on Bitcoin. Can you talk about some of the constraints and maybe some of the advantages that provides? Like as a builder, anything you noticed different from how you build a game without Bitcoin?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're not like building on Bitcoin. We're building, like I don't see it like we're building on it. I see it like we're plugging it into our game. So it's not like we need to. It doesn't change anything about building a game because it's like just an extra feature you're just tagging on. But it does change how you design your game considerably because you have to think about fraud, cheats, and like different user experience. Like because with mobile games, a lot of your organic traffic comes from how good your reviews are. So if someone thinks, it gets angry because they didn't win enough Bitcoin that day, they might give you a bad review. So you need to like have a strategy for how to deal with the negative effects of people feeling like they didn't get enough or they were greedy or whatever, and the negative effects of more cheats going to attacking your game when you do special events. So if I do a tournament that is like double the Bitcoin that weekend, it will get loads more people trying to cheat and people do notice, and I have to proactively work on it. So it just like adding any kind of money would cause these problems. Bitcoin's just money. It's just better money. So all the problems that would have been there if I just used PayPal would like still here.
Yeah. I like that analogy of just you're plugging into Bitcoin rather than building on Bitcoin.
Yeah,
and it seems
some things do build on Bitcoin, but when they send in payments around, like the payment message has like messages in it that are programmably put in there to do tasks for the receiver. But yeah, we're particularly not doing that. We're just plugging in. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's right. Like I think there's a few other Bitcoin applications that basically do the same thing, right? Like Fountain, I would say, kind of plugs in the same way, right? It doesn't. It's not necessarily built on Bitcoin, but it plugs in, and that's the tool you're using to move money around. Stacker News is another one, and I almost think that that's a distinction between the Bitcoin applications and some of the applications you see on other chains, like on Ethereum or something. Those ones tend to be entirely built and exist entirely on that blockchain, like Uniswap, for example, where it's just all on Ethereum. Do you think that's the way Bitcoin applications are headed? That most in the future are going to kind of just plug in for the money aspect of it, and build entirely, build everything else off of a blockchain?
Yeah, I think so. I really like the like Umbrel concept, which is self-sovereign computing, is like the node. So you don't have distributed software, you just have distributed nodes, and your client is on your server, like your Umbrel node. So like your chat app would be on there. It wouldn't be like on Lightning. Your gaming would be like on your node. It wouldn't be like on the network. It would be plugging into it, using it. Like you could use it for communication, like you could use Lightning as a communication tool, as well as money. But money is just communication anyway.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely people who are on. There are definitely products that will be built on Lightning, because it will be using the payments as a critical part of their product working, rather than it just being used for sending money around, I think.
Okay, I have a wild thought that you just put in my head. With Umbrel and the self-sovereign computing idea, do you think we ever get to a point where someone builds like an Umbrel node into a phone, like a phone that's its own self-sovereign phone, where you can then tap into all the different applications from it? Do you think it takes on different like hardware designs? Because right now it's just a little like Raspberry Pi for most people.
Yeah, I mean, that would be awesome. I think the first step is like, I feel like your home router will become your node. Like the router which you connect to the internet would have like all of this stuff on it, and you just have like this box that sits in your house which backs up your photos and like everything like that, and has your Bitcoin node on it, Lightning, games maybe, and then your phone could be a client of that, and then it could be really powerful, because it would kind of be a bit dumb, and you'd be using your home server for the heavy lifting.
Yeah, that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize. Like we have, there must be a billion or more routers in the world today. Just like everyone has one in their home. You just kind of forget about it. It's just like black box in your closet or something, and like no one thinks about it. No one has any use for the thing other than it lets you use the internet. And that makes me pretty bullish on how many Lightning nodes we could eventually see. If the
my Lightning node's literally next to my router. I connect it next to it. They could be in the same box.
Right. And I think like what happens if Lightning nodes can take on a life, as you were mentioning, like more than just the payment side? What if they can also store your photos and your videos and be the backend for your games? And like, what if it can do more than just pass payments back and forth?
The identity problem is a good one that it can solve, where your node starts being your identity, and you can use it to like use services and stuff, like to log into things, because you've got this like actual physical node that you can use to verify who you are. Like I think it could be definitely, there's so many different things.
Is that identity piece something that could be useful to Thunder Games for like thwarting attacks on, people like bots trying to like earn a bunch of Bitcoin?
Because the thing is, if you build up your identity on your node, you don't want to destroy it. You want it to be like, because you're putting time and effort into making it like a node that's going to work with everything. You don't want it to get banned, do you? Because like that costs you money. So it would be like I would trust a Bitcoin node, like someone's logged in via a Lightning node, more than like somebody logged in via Google, 100%. Because I could, if they cheated, I would just block their node, and they'd have to do a whole new node just to like use the service again. So like, there's not much point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that I'm quite bullish on that, but we'll have to see how it pans out. 'Cause it's not exactly user friendly thing to do.
Right. What do you think are the least? What are the worst kind of user experiences in the Lightning space right now? What are the things that need to be improved the most in order to, I guess, some of the constraints that are blocking additional adoption and additional progress? Like, is the constraint on the application side? Are there things in Thunder Games that you got to improve? Are the constraints on wallet side or on nodes, or where's that big bottleneck right now, do you think?
So for us, it's the adoption of the LNURL protocol. It's so good at letting us just send people Bitcoin without them having to create an invoice, and it makes it so much simpler and less error prone for users. So not all the wallets support it. Quite a lot do. BottlePay just announced they're supporting it, but Cash App don't at the moment. I don't think Strike do at the moment. And there's probably other big wallets that don't. But most of the kind of indie Lightning wallets, small Lightning companies, they all do support it. But it would just be much simpler for my company if everyone just like supported it, because Cash App really recently enabled their Lightning support, but because they don't support that, we can't support their thing until we update our games, because we are going to add some extra options for people to cash out. But now our games will have like this option to cash out, or this option, or this one. Like, we just want one. We don't want to have the confusion of multiple options for people. We want everyone to use a common standard. So that's something that would be really good. And also Apple needs to fix something because when an app on an iPhone needs to connect to a Bitcoin wallet, it picks one of the Bitcoin wallets at random. It doesn't give the user choices that they've got to choose from. Like, there's no pop-up to say, which wallet do you want to use for this action? It just opens whatever one. So like, it's kind of annoying for the end user, because we get people emailing us saying, I don't want to cash out to Breeze today. I want to do like the Blue wallet. And it's like, well, you can't, unfortunately. But that's something we're actually going to fix in the next couple of weeks. We've got a workaround that we're just basically going to build what Apple should have into our game, so the choice appears in the game instead of the operating system.
And for Apple, I want to talk about them because there's such a key player in the mobile space right now, and Lightning is such a mobile first experience. Do you think they get involved in Lightning Network, and if so, what capacity?
Yeah, I think well, they're obviously, like, everyone's aware of it, and I'm just completely speculating. They definitely understand it based on the feedback I get during the review process, because they'll ask questions. Does your game have blah blah this in it? Does it have that? And I reply very detailed answers. Like, I say, oh no, we use the LNURL protocol, blah blah blah, and try and teach them about it via this kind of weird review process. But definitely aware of it through me, at least. I think like Bitcoin and Lightning is not a large enough scale for even Apple to really care that much about. Even Bitcoin, like the amount of it's worth a lot of money, but not enough people use it, I don't think, for them to prioritize it. So, but I imagine there's some small team of 5 or 6 people who are dedicated to it at Apple. Like, they'd be crazy not to have that, and that'd be nothing to them. So, yeah, they're definitely going to do something, aren't they? Because you can't be ignored now at this point.
Yeah, I wonder what that moment is. Like, it seemed like Bitcoin had its moment there with corporations adopting it as a treasury asset, and just like overnight, one company came out and did it. MicroStrategy kind of like set this standard, and everyone kind of followed along. Now there's dozens of them. I kind of wonder what that first mover looks like from an application side, or like integrating it as a payment tool, whether that's Apple, whether that's Stripe, whether that's someone else, whether it's a gaming company. Maybe here's one question to finish off with. If you were to pitch Nintendo's CEO today on why they should integrate Lightning into their games, how would you do it?
Thanks for putting me on the spot. Okay, how would I do it? I would. I don't know. I would just maybe dress up as a plumber and like come up with some crazy pitch dressed as a plumber. I think to them, the way to pitch it is to say there's a whole community of people who want to use this product. If you were an early adopter to it, you can be the first mover in learning how this technology changes purchasing behavior in a game. Right now, the minimum in-app purchase people spend, it has to be $1. But what if it was 1 cent, or what if it was half a cent? Like, what different products would people buy? So that's how I'd pitch it. So like, you should experiment with this in case there's something really awesome with being able to offer purchases really very low amounts.
Yeah,
because I don't think they'd be interested in the Bitcoin rewards, because that's a specific genre of games that they don't do, reward-based games. But they do games where people buy stuff. So I think you'd have to pitch it to them like, here's a different type of model for in-app purchases, the streaming money model.
To see, I guess, if the reason someone doesn't buy is because, they have to pay at least $1, or if it's because they actually don't want it. And you won't know until you can try, offering a 1 cent fee, or like try it for half a cent. I guess you wouldn't know until that.
And also, like, $1 is a lot of money in like Venezuela. So like you could open your product up to Venezuela, like different products from Nintendo that people with not a lot of money could buy stuff in it. And they're huge markets, aren't they? Like, so it's just a different way to address those markets potentially. But Bitcoin needs to be adopted. It's like a chicken and egg thing. Like, if Bitcoin was being used by everyone there, then they would look at it, but they're not, so they can't. What's the point?
Right. That's really interesting. Okay, I know we're running out of time. I learned a ton from this conversation. We went in a lot of different directions here. Where can people go to learn more about you and Thunder Games?
The best place is to follow us on Twitter, which our handle is THNDR Games. And if you want to go to our website, it's THNDR.gg, thunder.gg. Those are the two best places. And on our website, there'll be links to Telegram and Discord if you want to talk to me on there and message me on there. Awesome.
Thanks for taking the time again to do a second run through of this interview. Hope listeners enjoyed as much as I did.
Cool. Thanks very much for having me on.
Welcome to the Lightning Round presented by Voltage. Voltage is the premier provider of Bitcoin and Lightning node infrastructure. Many of the apps and services you already use in the Bitcoin and Lightning ecosystem already use Voltage to scale their business quickly and easily without any maintenance. Voltage also offers an inbound liquidity product called Flow that helps you as a node operator get inbound liquidity quickly and easily. Overall, Voltage is creating the industry standard of non-custodial products, helping brands and startups and entrepreneurs scale. To learn more about Voltage, visit voltage.cloud. All right, let's get into the lightning round. First up, we have Mary Oscar, who sent in 3,861 sats. Thank you, Oscar, for the sats. That was for episode 15 with Danny Scott and Zach at Coin Corner. Next up, we have two questions. First in from BTC Rich, who sent in 1,485 sats and said, Bitcoin continues to chip away at traditional payment rails, which will be a long multi-year journey to disrupt the incumbents who all get a slice of the fee. I love the Umbral node idea of a GBP token alongside BTC and it solving the LNURL decentralization question. However, does that place too much risk on Umbral being the main provider of these bundled services in their app store? great question, BTC Rich. To be honest, I don't know the answer, but I'm actually having Start9's founder on episode 18 of the Kevin Rooke Show. So that should be out on Friday. And I'll bring that one up. We'll talk about personal servers. Start9 is building in the same kind of personal server space as Umbrel is. But my gut says it's probably a little bit too early to tell whether or not Umbrel has this centralization risk. There are competitors. Start9 is one of them. Another one that just kind of popped up is Impervious, which is releasing their browser. It's a little bit of a different product from Umbrel, but they just released the tech specifications for it, and the browser is supposed to be launched on April 7th. And I think that is going to be a Lightning native browser. And I think that could eventually kind of compete, or it could operate in the same space as Umbrel. So I think it's too early to say for sure that Umbrel is, too big to fail, or that it's, a centralization risk for the Lightning Network. I don't think that's true today. But I'll bring that question up when I talk to Start9's founder. Next comes in from Raven. Raven says, TikTok new block. Nice podcast with Coin Corner. Number go up. And Raven also added in their Lightning address. And Raven, since you were the only user to send in your Lightning address, you win the 1,500 sat giveaway that I announced last episode. Now, I'm going to be doing another giveaway this episode because this is episode 16. I'll be giving away 1,600 sats. So for any listeners, if you want to participate in this giveaway, you can send in a question or a comment over the Lightning Network, and make sure to include either a Lightning address, which is what Raven included, or a Twitter handle or something, some way for me to get in touch with you, because I can't currently pay you through Fountain. So this giveaway, I can pay Raven because they included a Lightning address. If you want to participate in next giveaway for the next episode, send in a comment, send in a question. Raven was the only one to do it. So free 1,500 sats. There you go. Thank you for everyone who has been sending in sats and comments and questions, though. We've had now 14 days in a row of people sending in sats, which is the only time that's ever happened in the last 3 or so months of me running the show. So I really appreciate that, and can't wait to see all your comments and questions for next episode.